Dear listener, welcome and thank you for listening to this exciting and moving story. I'm going to give you a brief glimpse into the story, but I encourage you to listen to it until the end, as the final chapter is the most exciting. To join us in our love of stories, I urge you to subscribe, like, and comment. It's all important to us in our efforts to grow this channel. Here's the plot. This is not just a story. It's a descent into the eerie and the mystical, where the line between memory and magic blurs. Perfect for fans of slow-burning suspense, haunting folklore, and stories that echo long after the final word. Press play, lose yourself in the mist, and discover why some truths are buried for a reason. The Island with No Graves. Chapter 1. The sea was too still. That was the first thing Isla noticed as her boat neared the rugged crescent of land rising from the horizon. Not a ripple, not a swell, as if the ocean had held its breath. It wasn't natural. Any sailor could feel the difference, the kind of stillness that made your bones whisper warnings. She stood barefoot on the prow, her boots in one hand, the other gripping the rusted railing. The island loomed like a sleeping giant, forested hills rolling gently toward a jagged cliff edge, beyond which lay the village she had only read about in footnotes and myths. Isla had spent her life studying places people forgot, but this one had refused to die, even in silence. Theralis. No deaths in 100 years, no graves, no funerals. No written records beyond vague accounts and whispers from old scholars who barely believed what they were saying. Now she was here, not as a believer, not quite a skeptic, but as someone who needed to understand. The boat scraped gently onto the black pebble shore. She stepped off, boots slung over her shoulder, her notebook clutched to her chest beneath her coat. Mist coiled low over the ground, curling like fingers around her calves as she walked. The path ahead rose in gentle curves, flanked by trees that seemed too quiet, too orderly, as if they had been arranged for watching rather than growing. Halfway up the slope, she stopped. A figure stood at the edge of the trees, small, still, watching. A girl, pale, with hair the color of dried wheat and eyes too large for her face. She wore a dress stitched from different fabrics and seasons, as though made to fit a child that never outgrew it. Her bare feet didn't move. "Hello?" Isla said, voice cautious but kind. The girl didn't answer, just tilted her head, and then, without a sound, she turned and vanished into the forest. Isla stood frozen, heart racing. The air thickened again. A crow cawed once, then silence returned. She pressed forward. At the top of the hill, the village revealed itself. Stone houses clustered together, as if huddling against the wind. Sloped roofs draped in moss, window shutters half open like blinking eyes. The narrow streets were cobbled but clean, and in the center stood an old bell tower without a bell. No one greeted her. No dogs barked, no doors opened. She passed a well with a bucket still half lowered, a bakery with its sign swinging slowly in the windless air. Smoke curled from a single chimney. Somewhere, a chime rang once, then stopped. Isla found the inn easily. A sign above the door read, "The Quiet House." Appropriate, she thought grimly. Inside, the innkeeper, a man named Dorin, gave her a room and bread without asking her name. His eyes were the color of weathered granite. He moved with the calm of someone who hadn't rushed in decades. "No keys," he said simply. "No one locks doors here." She ate in silence. The bread was fresh. The air smelled faintly of lavender and wood smoke. That night, she dreamed of a black spiral twisting in the sky above her and voices whispering from beneath the ground. When she awoke, she wasn't sure if the voice calling her name had been real or not. Outside, the wind was blowing, but the trees didn't move. Chapter 2. The Girl at the Edge. The morning sun came reluctantly, spilling pale light through the mist like a secret told too softly. Isla awoke to silence again, thick, complete. Not even the birds seemed to cry out. She sat at the edge of her narrow bed, fingers brushing the worn wood of the windowsill, her notebook open but untouched. Sleep had not brought her rest. The dream of the black spiral had returned, more vivid now. This time, she had heard her name whispered from within the spiral, not as a threat, but as a memory trying to surface. She stepped outside. The village looked the same as it had the day before, suspended, perfect in its quiet decay. Stone paths wound through tidy gardens, laundry lines hung with windless grace. But the silence now felt like it was watching her back. She walked, past the bakery again, Dorin nodded once from the window, and on toward the square. There, she saw her again. The girl. Same dress, same eyes. Standing barefoot beside the old fountain with hands clasped behind her back. This time, Isla approached slowly. "What's your name?" she asked, crouching to the girl's level. The girl tilted her head again. "Bryn." The voice was high but not childish, measured, like someone mimicking conversation, not owning it. "Do you live here?" Isla continued. Bryn nodded. "Always." "Have you always been this age?" A pause. Then another slow nod. Something twisted in Isla's stomach. She had read of folk tales where time stood still, where children never grew old. But this was different. Bryn did not seem enchanted. She seemed anchored. "Do you know why no one dies here?" Bryn looked down. Her feet shifted on the stone. "Because we're not allowed." Isla blinked. "Who says so?" Bryn didn't answer. Instead, she looked up and pointed past Isla toward the woods at the edge of the village. "The forest knows," she said. "It remembers." Before Isla could ask more, Bryn turned and darted away, graceful, quiet, almost dissolving into the morning haze. That afternoon, Isla explored the forest path. She took her time. Everything about this place defied urgency. The leaves above were deep green, heavy with moisture, and the forest floor smelled of earth and lavender. Each step muffled by moss. Branches arched overhead like cathedral vaults. She found the clearing easily. The air here changed, cooler, charged. In the center stood a strange stone gate, tall, oval, its surface polished obsidian, carved with an intricate spiral at its center. No hinge, no seam, just stone, and something beneath it. A hum, soft and low. She stepped closer and raised her hand to the spiral. The instant her fingers touched the stone, a vision flooded her senses. Flashes of people kneeling in mourning, then forgetting. Children laughing beside shallow graves that vanished. And finally, a tall figure with eyes like storms, stepping into the spiral and disappearing. Isla jerked her hand back, gasping. Her knees buckled. She sat on the grass, breath shaking. It wasn't a gate, it was a seal. And whatever it held back had not been buried. It had been bargained. She fled the clearing. That evening, she returned to the inn, her boots caked in mud, her heart pounding beneath her ribs. Dorin was lighting a lantern by the hearth. "You went into the forest," he said, without looking. "Yes." "You found it." Isla hesitated. "Why doesn't anyone talk about it?" Dorin turned, his eyes older than she remembered. "Because speaking its name brings it closer, and we've gone too long without consequence." "But that's not peace," Isla said. "It's sleepwalking." Dorin nodded. "Sometimes that's all we wanted." She took her journal to bed, and wrote one word across the center of the page. Why? And underneath, a second. Kaylin. The name she had seen, faintly etched in her vision of the spiral. That night, the dreams returned, and the spiral turned. Chapter 3. The Silence Beneath. Isla spent the next day tracing the village like a historian on pilgrimage. Every window, every step in the cobbled lanes, every unlit lantern and unmoving weather vane whispered the same thing: stillness. Yet beneath that silence, a deeper hum pulsed. Something unseen but felt, like a storm brewing underground. She visited the old schoolhouse. No children played in its yard, but chalk drawings still clung faintly to the slates inside, stick figures with spirals for eyes. She leafed through rotting books left on desks, brittle with time and damp. Names in the margins had been crossed out, over and over, until the pages tore. She felt as if someone, or something, had been trying to erase memory itself. In the bakery, Doran handed her a loaf with cracked hands and tired eyes. "You're not going to stop, are you?" he asked. "No," Isla said. "Would you?" He shook his head. "I did. Years ago. That's why I'm still here." That night, Bryn came to her room. The girl knocked once, and Isla opened the door to find her barefoot and shivering, eyes wide in the lamplight. "I remember something," Bryn whispered, "from before." Isla led her in and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "Tell me." "There was a man, tall, kind. He gave me a necklace, a blue stone, round. He said it would help me remember. But the next day, he was gone. And I couldn't even recall his name until now." Isla's heart pounded. What did he look like? Bryn closed her eyes. He had eyes like storms, and he said he was going somewhere the others couldn't follow. Kaylin. Isla reached into her satchel and pulled out her journal. She showed Bryn the page, the name, scrawled in bold ink. "That's him?" Bryn whispered. He said the silence was eating everything, that one day someone would come to wake it. Isla felt tears sting her eyes. "Why you, Bryn? Why are you still a child?" Bryn looked down at her small hands. "I don't think I ever grew. Not really. I think he stopped time for me. I think I was the price." They sat together in the quiet for a long time. Outside, the wind had picked up, but the trees still didn't move. It was a silence of tension now, not peace. When Bryn had finally fallen asleep on the small cot, Isla returned to the spiral, alone. The clearing was different now. The spiral stone glowed faintly beneath the moon. This time, Isla approached without hesitation. She pressed her palm to the cold obsidian, and the world fell away. She stood in the darkness. Not blackness, but a realm of layered whispers and flickers of half-formed memory. Figures moved past her like shadows. Some turned toward her, eyes hollow. Others seemed to cry without sound. The spiral pulsed in the air above, massive now, rotating slowly like a celestial body. And then he appeared. Kaylin, just as Bryn described, tall, robed, his eyes twin storms trapped in human form. He looked older now, wearier, but still fierce. "You found me," he said. His voice was the sound of a breeze over stone. "Why did you do it?" Isla asked. "Why silence them?" Kaylin's shoulders sank. Because grief was killing them. Because war, plague, and hunger, none of it broke them like loss did. So I made a bargain. I sealed death here. I gave them eternity. But I couldn't stay to watch the cost. What was the cost? Memory, growth, love. The things that only mean something when time passes. I thought I was saving them. I was only burying them. Isla's breath caught. Can it be undone? He stepped forward. It must be. She reached out, and for a moment, their hands met, warm against the spiral's cold. He pressed something into her palm, a pendant, small and round, carved from the same obsidian as the gate. "Speak the names," he said. "That's how it begins." She blinked, and he was gone. Isla awoke in the clearing. The stone was no longer pulsing. The spiral had dimmed, but in her hand lay the pendant, real and cold and impossibly heavy. She knew what she had to do: return to the village, speak the names, wake the silence. Chapter 4. The Breath Beneath the Gate. The next morning, Isla awoke before dawn. The dream clung to her like damp linen. She sat at her desk, brushing the pages of her journal with shaking fingers. Her hand hovered over the inkwell, uncertain of what to write. The page remained blank. Bryn didn't appear that morning, nor the next. The village moved in rhythms unchanged. The bakery smelled of warm oat bread. The blacksmith hammered steel for tools no one used. And the children played without scraped knees or loud arguments. But Isla noticed it now, the hollowness beneath the peace. On the third morning, Isla returned to the clearing. She went alone. The woods whispered her name now. She heard it in the rustle of leaves, in the creak of branches above. Isla, Isla. Whether it was her imagination or something more, she did not know. When she reached the gate, she sat before it and stared. The spiral shimmered with a dark luster. She touched it again. No response. Only a strange warmth, like a pulse beneath the stone. She pressed her forehead to it. "What are you?" she whispered. Suddenly, the air changed. Not colder, thinner. A pressure built in her ears. She staggered back, and in the sheen of the gate, she saw a reflection. A man, cloaked and tall, holding a child with eyes wide as the sky. Kaelin. She blinked, and he was gone. The gate faded back to stone. The forest exhaled. She returned to the village in a daze. That evening, she found Dorin sitting outside the bakery, smoking a pipe. "Why don't you people ask questions?" Isla demanded. He regarded her quietly. "Questions are dangerous here. Why do you all live as if nothing ever ends?" Dorin took a long pull on the pipe. "Because nothing has. Not for over 100 years. But you must remember, before." "Some of us do," he said. "But memory is a slow poison. We've learned to let it go." Isla shook her head. "You've forgotten how to grieve." Dorin's voice softened. "You don't understand what it took to get here." She left him there in the lamplight, the scent of burnt cedar trailing behind her. That night, Bryn appeared at Isla's door. She looked paler, eyes rimmed with red. "Corin is sick," she said. "The boy who swims in the southern spring, the one with the loud laugh." "Sick?" Isla blinked. "But no one gets sick here." Bryn nodded. "That's why it's different." They went together to the southern spring. Corin lay on a mat of reed and moss. His breath rattled. His skin burned with fever. Around him, the villagers stood like statues, unsure. Isla knelt beside him. "Has he seen a healer?" "We don't have healers anymore," someone muttered. "No one needs them." Isla cursed under her breath and began checking his pulse, his eyes, his lips. The fever was real. The decline was fast. "I need willow bark, water, salt," she ordered. "Now." To her surprise, they moved. Bryn fetched the bark. Dorin brought water. Others returned with herbs, blankets. But it was too late. Corin died before midnight. His last word was, "home." Isla stared at the stillness of his chest, her hands trembling. Around her, no one wept. In the morning, she demanded a funeral, a burial. Elsha, the oldest of the village council, met her gaze for the first time. "We don't know how." You don't remember how? Isla snapped. We've had no need. Bryn spoke then. We need to, for him. So they dug, slowly, awkwardly, beneath the elder trees on a hill above the sea, the first grave in Theralis in 100 years. They wrapped Corin in cloth and laid him down with trembling hands. No rituals, no songs, only the sound of shovels and wind, and Isla, whispering words of parting. When the last of the earth was patted down, Bryn placed the lavender sprig atop it. For the first time, Theralis was silent with grief, and somewhere deep in the forest, the gate stirred. Chapter 5. Beneath the Surface. The village of Theralis, once wrapped in quiet order and unspoken traditions, felt different in the days after Corin's burial. A wind had shifted, not only in the trees, but in the hearts of its people. Children played with less laughter. Elders lingered longer on benches, their eyes often turned to the sea. Isla walked among them, sensing the tension. But more than that, the opening. The island was stirring, and so were its people. Bryn had changed. Her once mischievous grin gave way to long silences and absent stares. She followed Isla like a shadow now, asking a few questions, but watching everything. One afternoon, she spoke quietly, while Isla sifted through herbs near the edge of the forest. It's happening again. What is? Isla asked, glancing up. The forgetting. Bryn explained that after Corin's death, strange things had started. A boy forgot his own name for a day. A woman couldn't recall her husband's face for hours. Elders mumbled songs they'd never learned. It was as if the gate, disturbed, was feeding on their memories. That night, Isla returned to the gate. The spiral pulsed faintly under moonlight. She brought her journal and a lantern. She placed her hand against the stone and whispered Kaelin's name. The gate answered. Not with words, but with visions. They flooded her mind. Images of Kaelin kneeling in blood-soaked soil, a woman dying in his arms, a child screaming beside a burning altar. She saw Kaelin etch runes into the earth, binding something vast. Not evil, not divine, simply ancient. And then she saw him walking into the obsidian spiral, never to return. Isla fell to her knees, sobbing. The truth was not a blessing. It was a burden. The next day, Isla shared what she had seen with Elsha, the village elder. The old woman listened without interruption, her face unreadable. You must leave, Elsha said at last. Leave? Isla blinked. Now? You've awakened what was meant to sleep. The bargain is breaking. What bargain? Elsha looked away. We gave up death so we wouldn't have to feel pain. But pain finds its way back. Isla stood. And if we don't let it return properly, what happens? The island forgets everything and everyone. Isla returned to the grave. Bryn followed in silence. Together they knelt and touched the mound of earth. I don't want to forget him, Bryn whispered. We won't, Isla said. Not if we speak his name. Not if we remember what it means to lose. As they spoke, the wind picked up. The trees groaned. In the heart of the forest, the gate opened an inch. That night, 3 villagers went missing. No struggle, no sign of flight, just empty beds and shoes by the door. Isla organized a search. Bryn led a group into the forest. Others combed the shoreline. At dawn, a child returned, alone. She remembered nothing, not even her own mother. Isla sat with her in the square. What do you see when you close your eyes? She asked. The girl stared ahead. Dark vines. A voice that isn't a voice. Kaelin. The time for answers had passed. Isla knew she had to go beyond the gate. Whatever Kaelin had done, she had to undo or complete it. But first, she had to face the truth. She returned to her journal, searching through pages of symbols and stories. She found an old drawing, a spiral etched in blood. Underneath, a phrase: "That which is sealed in silence must be named to be freed." She turned to Bryn. "We have to speak his name, aloud, together." "Kaelin?" Bryn whispered. The wind roared, leaves flew. The gate groaned open another inch. Isla stood. "We have to go through." Bryn's eyes widened. "Now?" Isla nodded, and so they prepared. For the journey, for the truth, for what waited beneath the surface. Chapter 6. The Weight of What Waits. The forest greeted them like a cathedral of breath and bone. Moonlight filtered through the silver leaf canopy, casting shifting patterns across the narrow path that led toward the gate. Isla carried her journal and a cloth satchel filled with herbs, stones, and candles. Bryn carried only a lantern, her fingers clenched so tightly around its handle that her knuckles blanched. Neither of them spoke. Each step felt heavier, not with fear, but with anticipation. The air thickened, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Roots curled like claws across the ground, and strange symbols glowed faintly on trunks they passed. Symbols Isla had seen only once, in Kaelin's visions. When they reached the clearing, the spiral shimmered in full moonlight. It was wide open now, a dark vortex spinning slowly in place, suspended inches above the forest floor. It didn't open like a door. It peeled like skin. Bryn trembled. "Isla, what if we don't come back?" Isla placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we make sure this matters." She stepped into the spiral. She expected darkness. Instead, light burst like stars behind her eyes. Isla landed not in a cave or a tunnel, but in a vast hall of shifting light and memory. The walls were made of water, held in place by invisible hands. Faces drifted within. Hundreds, maybe thousands, some familiar, some not. Bryn appeared beside her a moment later, pale and wide-eyed. "Where are we?" she whispered. "The place between," Isla said. "Memory, silence, the cost of the bargain." A shadow formed in the distance. Not monstrous. Human. Kaelin. He walked toward them across the gleaming floor, dressed in dark robes, his face lined with sorrow. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice like wind and thunder. "We didn't have a choice," Isla said. "Your world is unraveling." Kaelin closed his eyes. "I bound death in this place. I buried it so no one would suffer again. I thought it mercy." "You stole something essential," Isla said. "They've forgotten how to grieve, and now they forget who they are." Kaelin opened his hands. In them appeared a small stone, pulsing like a heartbeat. "This is the anchor. It holds the silence in place." Bryn stepped forward. "Then let it go." Kaelin hesitated. "Do you know what will happen?" "Yes," Isla said. "Life and death and memory." Kaelin looked at them for a long time. Then he placed the stone in Isla's palm. "I am tired," he said. "Tell them I was sorry." The world trembled. Light fractured. They awoke on the forest floor. The gate was gone. Above them, dawn broke golden and alive. The first birds they had ever heard sang from the canopy. In the distance, the bell of the old shrine rang, though no one had touched it in years. Isla stood slowly. Bryn stirred beside her, coughing and rubbing her eyes. "Did it work?" Bryn asked. They returned to the village. Already changes were happening. People wept freely. Children asked questions. Elders remembered things they had long buried. 3 villagers who had vanished were found walking back from the coast, confused but unharmed. The fog that had shrouded the village for decades had lifted. Dorin met Isla at the steps of the bakery. He held out a loaf of bread and a journal. "It's yours," he said. "What is it?" Isla asked. "A history," he said. "We need to start writing again." That night, the stars were visible for the first time in a century, and the island, once silent, began to sing again. Chapter 7. Echoes in the Blood. Morning came wrapped in a golden hush. The entire island seemed to exhale, as though relieved from a burden it had carried for generations. The fog that had clung to the treetops like a curtain of silence had lifted, revealing hills and paths unseen for decades. For the first time, the sea looked like something real, shimmering, open, calling. But for Isla, the weight had only shifted. She walked the village like a stranger again, seeing people with new eyes, laughing too loud, crying too often, remembering fragments like broken glass rising to the surface. The price of memory returned slowly, jagged and raw. She passed Elsha near the old well. The elder woman clutched her shawl tightly and blinked like someone waking from a long sleep. "I remember my sister," she murmured. "She died in the river. We never spoke of it." Isla rested her hand gently on Elsha's arm. "Speak of her now. Tell someone." That afternoon, the villagers gathered, not because they were told, but because they needed to. In the square, beneath the shade of the central tree, they came with songs, names, and tears. Bryn sat beside Isla on the old bench, her knees pulled to her chest. "They're remembering faster than I thought," she said. "Grief opens the door," Isla said. "We walk through one name at a time." A young boy named Haro stepped forward and recited a poem he had never written before. A widow carved her husband's name into stone. Someone else began building a wall to place these names, a memory wall, carved by hand, remembered in voice. As night fell, Isla wandered into the forest alone. She needed to feel the earth without voices. The clearing where the gate once stood had changed. The grass was new. Flowers bloomed in a ring where the obsidian spiral had hovered. In the center stood a single sapling, thin, reaching, alive. She knelt and touched its trunk. The bark was warm. Kaelin's stone was buried there. She had done it silently, with Bryn watching, both of them knowing it was not to be kept. Anchors belong in the deep. A soft rustle behind her. Bryn. "You okay?" Isla asked without turning. Bryn nodded. "It feels like he's still here." "He is," Isla said, "but not trapped anymore." They sat there for hours. Bryn fell asleep with her head on Isla's lap. The stars moved above, tracing stories no one had read for 100 years. And Isla, heart still heavy, but finally open, began to write. She wrote about Kaelin, not as a villain, but as a man. She wrote about the villagers, their loss, their courage. She wrote about silence and memory, about how forgetting is a wound that bleeds slowly. And she wrote about Bryn, the girl who led her into the woods and never let go. When she returned to the village the next morning, a new structure was rising beside the memory wall, a library. Dorin handed her a bundle of blank books and said, "You'd better stay a while." Isla smiled. She knew she would. Chapter 8. Echoes that heal. The light pouring from the gate was not blinding. It was familiar. It pulsed like the warmth of a remembered voice, like childhood laughter echoing from a long-forgotten hallway. Isla stepped through with slow, reverent steps, bracing herself for fire, void, judgment. But what met her was neither pain nor oblivion. It was a garden, lush, impossible, a place out of time. The air shimmered gold, and every leaf vibrated with quiet song. Trees that bore glowing fruit stood beside pools of still water so clear they reflected not the face, but the soul. And in the center stood Kaelin, younger than the drawings, strong, cloaked in grief. He turned when Isla entered. His eyes, so much like hers, widened. "Blood of my blood," he said. "It took you long enough." "Why?" she asked, stepping forward. "Why did you do it?" He looked past her, at something distant. "I couldn't save her," he said, voice thick with old sorrow. "So I made a world where no one would have to feel what I felt. I gave up the truth to buy a lie that would last forever. But forever is a cage." "You imprisoned them," Isla said. "You denied them grief, healing, growth." He closed his eyes. "I know. And now the lie breaks because you came." She paused. "Can I undo it?" "You already have. The moment you opened the gate, the moment you let death in again. That was mercy." "But what now?" Isla asked. "What happens to you?" Kaelin smiled, and it was unbearably sad. "I was bound to this illusion, but you are free." The garden began to dissolve. First the leaves, then the fruit, then the sky. Kaelin faded with it. "Tell them," he whispered. "Tell them to remember." Isla stumbled back through the gate as the last glow ebbed. Her body shook with exhaustion. Her hands ached. But she was alive. Bryn ran to her, clutching her tightly. "Did you see him?" "Yes." "Is it over?" Isla looked up at the sky. For the first time, birds circled above the trees. "I think it's just beginning." In the days that followed, the village began to change. People wept, for lost time, for memories unspoken. Graves were dug, names were carved. The children learned songs of sorrow and hope. Elders told stories again, and none of them hid the endings. Elsha passed away quietly one morning by the sea, a smile on her face. They buried her beside Koren, and no one feared the sound of bells anymore. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Bryn sat on the gate's dais beside Isla, who now wore the green cloak of the village chronicler. "Do you miss him?" Bryn asked. Isla didn't answer right away. "I never knew him, but now I understand him." Bryn traced a spiral in the dirt. "What do we do now?" "We live," Isla said, "and we die. And in between, we love, we lose, and we tell the truth." She closed her journal and looked at the horizon, where waves rose and fell like breath. Epilogue: The Voices That Rose. Long after Isla's own grave had joined the hillside, children still gathered near the gate, tracing its vines, speaking its legends. The island had graves now, hundreds, but it also had gardens, laughter, stories, and time that flowed not in a circle, but forward. And carved in the stone of the dais were new words. To remember is not to grieve forever, it is to heal honestly. And the people of Theralis remembered. And they lived. The end. Dear listener, to join us in our love of stories, I urge you to subscribe, like, and comment. It is very important to us in our efforts to grow this channel.